Welcome to Clout 941. I'm the host, Ron Filipkowski. This is the only live television show about Sarasota politics and issues, and we have an interesting show tonight. We're trying to cover in our last few shows and our next couple some of the things that were recently passed by the legislature. It was really an interesting session, and we're going to tackle one of the big issues tonight with our guest, Dan Lobeck. But first, our commentary on the news. Our prediction back in January, February is all coming to fruition. The dominoes are all playing out, falling into place, and as I predicted 3 months ago, tomorrow you will get the news that Charlie Crist, our governor, is going to run for the United States Senate against Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is actually going to be my guest at a function where he's going to be the guest speaker in 2 days, where he's coming to Venice to answer questions. And I'm going to host a forum where he is going to answer questions and make comments and introduce himself. And we expect Governor Crist to be coming to Sarasota soon as part of his campaign. And that's going to start the dominoes to fall. We also predicted Vern Buchanan would then run for governor. And then, of course, that would open up the congressional seat here, and there will be a lot of people jumping into that. We expect Senator Dieter, Bill Galvano, Mike Bennett, and a host of others to jump into the congressional race. And then, of course, a number of people to be running for their jobs. So it should be quite a free-for-all in 2010. Now, there was also a little blurb in Creative Loafing this week about how Democrats, the local Sarasota County Democrats, and the chair of the party, Rita Ferrandino, who's going to be our guest on again in a couple of weeks, have outraised Republicans in the first quarter of 2009. $40,000 to $2,000. They've outraised them. Now, of course, part of that is because the Democrats had their major fundraising dinner, and the Republicans have not yet had their Lincoln Day dinner, and the Republicans are going to do that in June. But it is interesting that Democrats are doing better locally, raising money, and that was a high priority for Chairman Rita. Next, the Sarasota Herald Tribune editorial page this week, as well as the New York Times and a number of other national papers, have said that that Obama must pick a woman to fill the next Supreme Court vacancy, because there's only one woman on the United States Supreme Court. Although we certainly wouldn't have any problem with it being a woman, and that would be great, I think it's ridiculous for anybody to come out and say basically half the population is excluded from consideration. Basically setting up a quota situation. Although certainly it'd be great for there to be another woman on the court, nobody should come out and say it has to be a woman. Also, local Democrats are happy that it's Ray Pilon on the Republican side who seems to be the candidate who is going to line up to run against Keith Fitzgerald. We've gotten word behind the scenes that Keith Fitzgerald is elated, that he was concerned he was going to have to face a more difficult to beat opponent, and he's very happy to square off against Ray Pilon. We'll keep an eye on that. And now to our guest, Dan Lobeck. Dan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ron, very much. Glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Dan, we had you on the show really to talk about a couple of specific growth-related issues. I want you to tell our audience a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm a lawyer and a refugee from Fort Lauderdale. Moved here in the 1980s to escape what was becoming an overdeveloped, overgrown area. And chose Sarasota because it was great quality of life. So just trying to preserve that, do a little bit what I can.
Fort Lauderdale's overgrown, you think?
You know, it's a great place to visit, and it certainly has its charms, but not the kind of place I wanted to stay and raise a family.
And the organization that you belong to, or are you president of?
Right, it's called Control Growth Now. It used to be called GEO, and we changed the name a number of years ago to more clearly state our mission. And what we just try to do is preserve our quality of life, keep it the special place that attracted a lot of us to move here to begin with. And there are a lot of forces at play to try to destroy that quality of life, and we're just trying to balance things out.
And when did you start this organization, or did you join it?
I was the second president. Jim Ford started it back in, actually this is our 20th anniversary.
It's been around 20 years.
Been working at it for a while.
Wow. And it's a nonpartisan group then?
It is. We do endorse candidates, get very involved in elections, try to help the people we believe stand for the people. But we're not partisan. We have Democrats, Republicans, both involved with the group.
And what is the mission of the organization? What's your primary purpose?
Well, as I said, what we're trying to do is balance those who are able to use government so effectively because of their big campaign contributions to overdevelop our area, to build more intensely than our infrastructure can support, to raise taxes to subsidize development, to do all the kind of things that we believe are contrary to the public interest. So we try to stand for the public interest to balance out those very powerful forces on the other side.
Do you feel that in the last, say, 10 years or so, Sarasota has grown too fast, has been overdeveloped?
There have been certain areas that have been overdeveloped. There are certain buildings, even downtown, that are out of proportion with its surroundings, block out the sunlight. But generally it's been controlled, in part because there hasn't been the big push to exploit some of the loopholes that have been created. The law has gone in the wrong direction, both statewide and locally. And the fear is that if it continues to go in that direction, we'll ultimately see a big diminution of our quality of life.
So what you're concerned about, and I guess what we're going to get into later, is that some of the laws passed on the statewide level may open things up for developers here locally.
More than open up, sort of throw away the keys. I mean, the main thing is the traffic. See, what happened, Ron, in this last session? The statewide public opinion polls are showing people weren't concerned so much about growth and traffic anymore because we don't have any growth anymore. So it's logical that the economy has taken first priority in terms of public opinion polls. So the developers, who basically control the political system anyway, use that opening through their proxies, like Mike Bennett, state senator, himself a developer, to push through laws to basically dismantle growth management in Florida.
I was going to ask you specifically about Mike Bennett because he seems to be, he's term limited out, so this is it for him, and he seems to be one of the prime movers of a lot of this legislation. What's your opinion of him and what he's done?
See, as an attorney, I know the laws of libel and slander, but you know, I mean, he's a charming guy. He's very bright, but unfortunately, he uses those attributes not for the public good, but for the public ill, to line the pockets of the developers that feed him money so he can become more powerful, seeking to be Senate president next year, and to get through some very bad legislation, particularly this last session when everybody's attention was elsewhere.
I suppose him being a developer himself could cause him to, I don't know, side more towards them, huh?
He does. I mean, that's his sympathies. Is not the public interest, but the interests of those powerful forces that he represents and that he himself is a part of. And not that I have anything against developers. I mean, you know, they build their homes, they build their stores. But the problem is when certain developers, like Mr. Bennett, don't care about traffic congestion, for instance. He actually passed a bill that largely eliminated, the state law that prevents developers from overcrowding our roads. It's called concurrency. It was a law that said that there must be adequate infrastructure in place to handle the developer's traffic concurrent with, at the same time as the development's impacts, or it wouldn't be allowed. And that has been a good law since 1985. It's called the underpinning of growth management by its author, to keep us from being stuck in intolerable traffic congestion.
And that's been repealed?
And that's been repealed. There's no longer a state law with regard to traffic congestion in any community, any county or city with more than 1,000 people per square mile. And that includes Venice, City of Sarasota, Longboat Key, and other communities in 9 counties over on the other side of the state. And all the other counties, like Sarasota County, have the ability to opt into that exemption. But still at a local level, those cities can have local laws, but there's not a state law anymore.
All right, well, it's time for our first break. When we come back, we'll talk more about some of the growth-related issues in Sarasota County and some of the things that were passed by the legislature.